Good evening. This is CJ with the Goat Sports Talk, discussing the NFL players basically being mad at these NBA contracts. And one of these guys is Terrance Knighton, and he was hating, major player hating on pretty much James Harden's contract, a lot of these players' contracts. And at the end of the day, it comes down to the NFL Players Association not willing to hold out. In fact, if you recall, there was a couple of years ago or a few years ago where there was an NFL, they felt like there was a possibility that they may have an NFL lockout. And guess what happened? These players caved in. They did not want to hold on to the very end. In fact, the season before, the NFL Players Association had told their players that, hey, there's a possibility that the season might not start on time. We might hold out the whole season or half the season, but you got to prepare for the worst. Save your money that you make this previous season so we can basically have that leverage to hold out. Because at the end of the day, if the players did come together and hold out, they would have gotten a better deal. There's no doubt about it. They would have gotten a better deal, probably some kind of insurance for players that maybe have career-ending injuries that play at least a certain amount of seasons. They might be able to get them like a minimum salary amount that they could get paid. There's a whole bunch of different things. Of course, we know they have a retirement fund, but I'm talking about for those that maybe played a few seasons but had a career-ending injury to where the doctor even said, hey, this is career-ending, he can't play no more, and maybe be able on the back end take care of those type of players. Or they could have created something where they could have gotten more guaranteed money. They could have had deals where maybe if the team decided to terminate the contract, that player should be able to get a certain percentage of what was remaining from the contract that was left. All kinds of things that they could have done, but they didn't do it. So now I'm going to read this stuff from Terrance Knighton. It says here, Aaron Rodgers should be making more money than James Harden. Tom Brady should be making more money than Steph Curry. Aqib Talib and Chris Harris should make more money than Evan Turner. Antonio Brown should make more money than Mike Conley. Julio Jones should make more money than DeMar DeRozan. Aaron Donald should make more money than Otto Porter. I could name at least 30 people who should make more money than Chandler Parsons. So he goes on. I could name another 30 that should make more than Harrison Barnes. So he's looking at it from the perspective of star power and who's important to the league and things like that. Now, I do agree that, yeah, you could say to a certain degree that maybe some players are being overpaid, but I'll tell you one thing that a lot of people that follow sports don't know. These players are getting paid at or less than what they should really be getting paid. What I mean by that is if you're seeing Harden making $40 million a year, that means he's probably worth maybe 60 to 80 million to the Rockets when you really break it down. When you see LeBron James making $40 million a year, a lot of people know he should be probably making $100 million a year from Cavaliers and the NBA. The NBA should be paying him because he's representing the NBA, not just the Cavaliers. So when you look at these guys that are playing and they got this talent, at the end of the day, NBA players are more skilled than NFL players. It is harder to be an NBA player than it is an NFL player outside of probably being a quarterback. All other positions, someone can learn that, towards the tail end of high school. In fact, some positions, there's guys that didn't play no college football. And like Antonio Gates. You got guys that weren't even big-time high school football players. They might have been wide receivers that barely got the ball thrown at them in high school, and they end up being guys that end up being good receivers in college and high school and catching the ball a lot. So it's kind of like when you look at things from the perspective of, from a skill standpoint, it is much harder to be an elite basketball player, which an elite basketball player would be an NBA player, than it is to be an NFL player. Because if you look at the sheer amount of rosters, the development, the coaching, the schemes, there's so many things that go into consideration of making a player good in the NFL versus the NBA. An NBA player, if he ain't got a jump shot, he doesn't got a jump shot going anywhere else. But you can hide a guy that doesn't have a particular skill in certain parts of the team. For example, if you got a person who is maybe a defensive back and they get older in their career and they're a cornerback, they can sometimes slide to safety if they have other skills. But if they don't, they're out of the league. So I do understand the frustration of the players, but the NFL players have to use leverage in the next collective bargaining agreement and say, We're seeing these NFL players getting paid a lot of money. Now, if you saw, I did the thing on, the NFL being the most highest grossing professional league in all of the world, and they make a ton of billions upon billions of dollars. I think it was a little over $10 billion a year in revenue. So now they got to do something to say, okay, look, if we're the elite of the elite, if there's nowhere else they can go for talent and fill the team, we got to hold out. But at the end of the day, you got players that are looking for those roster bonuses. They didn't sign their new contracts, or they got a nice salary coming up the next year. And to them, it's not worth it. And this is what happens in the NFL. The reason why the NFL has problems is because you do have guys that are making a ton of money at the top, that the salary issue is not really a concern to them. Then you got guys that are basically very good players. They're not making much money. We see it all the time. I mean, Antonio Brown was balling for years, and he wasn't making money. And now they just gave him a deal, and even the deal they gave him wasn't even worth some of the other players that are out there. So it's like, you see that type of stuff happening quite a bit in the NFL. You see holdouts a lot because of these reasons, but that's just the way it is. To me, Terrance Knighton, what he needs to do, as a word of advice, hit up the NFL Players Association, talk to your fellow teammates, and say, what can we do differently when the time comes around? Because a lot of times, if you're looking at things from the perspective of, I want to get what I can get now and not care about the future of the league and who is going to come after me, one thing that the NBA Players Association has done is with, and who's been part of that, LeBron James, Chris Paul, a lot of other players, is that they take it into consideration to help the future players. A lot of the stuff that they're doing is not just to help them right now, but it's also to help players down the road. And one thing about NBA players, for whatever reason, they just really care about each other. They understand that there's going to be different things. Now, in the next collective bargaining agreement, they might eliminate certain aspects of role players making a lot of money, but at the end of the day, that's owners doing that. I mean, a lot of these owners, a lot of these GMs, when you just look at it, they just don't know basketball. There's owners that know basketball, and there's those that don't know basketball. There's GMs that are just hired because they're a friend of somebody, or they had some other office role position and they know somebody, they're a friend of a friend of a friend. But when they get in there, they make these decisions that other teams wouldn't make. And that's partly the reason why you see what's going on in the NBA. There's those contracts that were offered to some of those players. There's other GMs that say, I would never offer him such money. But there's other teams that would. And at the end of the day, as a player, you're going to go where you're wanted the most and where you're going to get paid the most money, 9 times out of 10. Unless you've already made that money and you just want to win titles, that's different. So it is what it is. I'm going to go ahead and sign off on this, man. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think.